Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Outside the Big City, Attracting and Retaining Immigrant Talent in Rural Areas. Once again, my name is Fatma Hassan. I'm the project coordinator of the Hire Immigrants program, and it's my pleasure to host today's webinar. Based at Ryerson University in Toronto, the Hire Immigrants program provides a platform for employers and stakeholders, both for-profit and non-profit, to find and share practical solutions for the types of challenges we'll be talking about today. Sponsoring today's webinar is the Government of Ontario, which has been a valuable public sector partner that's committed to finding solutions to the integration and employment challenges faced by newcomers and immigrants. Joining us today is Ryan Deska, Economic Development Specialist with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. Ryan will provide us with an overview of the challenges facing rural communities across Ontario and a summary of 2 provincial resources that look to support communities seeking to attract and retain newcomers and immigrants. Our second speaker today is Oliver Price. Oliver is a project coordinator of the Rural Employment Initiatives Project at the Newcomer Centre of Peel. Oliver will share with us his expertise on how to connect immigrants to employers in rural communities that have sustainable job opportunities. A quick word about who else is in this virtual room today. We're a diverse group, and a good number of us are employers, civil servants, service providers, and professionals in the immigration and employment fields. We've also got a mixed audience today. Some are Canadian and others are joining us from abroad. Welcome to our Canadian participants, some returning and some new, and welcome to our international colleagues as well. So attracting and retaining newcomer talent is a challenge many rural communities are faced with. As their populations age, young adults move away, a shrinking labor force, and population decline, small cities and towns across Canada, are increasingly looking to immigrants and newcomers as a way to rejuvenate their workforce and sustain their economies and communities. Attracting immigrants and convincing them to stay is a challenge, but there are solutions. Many skilled and talented newcomers and immigrants are looking for stable career opportunities and creating a comfortable life for themselves and their families, and many are willing to move for the right opportunity. What those opportunities are and the role of receiving communities and employer engagement are some of the issues that we'll be discussing today during our webinar with our 2 speakers. So without any further ado, let's get started with Ryan. Ryan, please walk us through your presentation today.
Yes, hi everyone. Sorry, I was speaking to everyone and had my phone on mute. As an age-old mistake, but thanks everyone for being here, and it's very encouraging to see this many people coming together around a really timely issue, not only given what's happening across the world, but what's happening here at home in our rural communities. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone over their lunch hour. So yeah, as Fatma mentioned, I'm going to give a quick overview of some of the demographic trends that are happening in rural Ontario, and then some of the ways that we here in the Economic Development Programs Unit are contributing to this conversation. So in terms of workforce development, as a topic, it's crucial to the success of the business and the broader economy. And we hear stories about companies like Google or Shopify, these companies who've put a real effort into making their workplaces fun and attractive and inviting with various different employee attraction programs. And we've seen that companies are recognizing that this is good for their bottom line, to have the best talent and the best people knocking at their door. And we're increasingly seeing that communities in rural Ontario and elsewhere are seeing the same thing, that bringing people to their communities is not only good for the health and vitality of the communities, but for their businesses who need employees. And again, we always come back to this economic development focus here in our department, and this is the conversation that we're having today around economic development. So when we look to some of the when we look to some of the demographic trends that I'll talk about today, it's an aging population in rural Ontario. It's aging across the board, but increasingly in rural Ontario. They're facing population decline, youth out-migration. So one of the things is really, it's definitely, do we have the right workers, but it's just overall the availability of workers with the right knowledge and skills to work in rural Ontario. So when we look at some of the occupations, maybe sometimes people in urban centers think about rural Ontario and they think first about farming, and that rural Ontario is primarily characterized by farming, but that's a little bit of a misleading, a misnomer. There's all kinds of different occupations in our rural communities that we see, from sales to hands-on trades and transport equipment operation, occupations in manufacturing and utilities, business, health occupations. These are just the top 5 in terms of employment, and I took this from Perth County because I've been doing some work there. But and again, when we look at the growth that's happening, we see out of all of them, the highest growers there are in manufacturing and utilities and in health occupations. So really there's this is just here to sort of characterize that there are some industries that are growing in rural Ontario beyond the farming and things like that, and they're definitely looking for employees to be filling their roles. And this is a challenge, and I'll speak to that in a little bit, but speaking with some employers at some of the meetings we've had, it's a pretty significant challenge in rural Ontario to be attracting the talent that they need to grow and expand. And so there could be a bit of a missed opportunity here if we're not able to address some of the workforce needs. So one of the demographic issues that we're facing, no surprise to many people, we have the baby boom generation that's aging and leaving the workplace in the years to come. So these are some of the statistics pulled together by the Conference Board that really look to showcase the sort of succession planning issue that we're facing with, with the ratio of workers to retirees, over approximately 5 million across Canada who are set to retire by 2035, and these same numbers that we're seeing in rural Ontario, and even a little bit accelerated. So certainly we're facing an aging workforce, people are retiring, there's going to be a lot of new positions for people to fill. When we look at who's going to be replacing those jobs, one of the issues that characterizes rural Ontario is definitely that we're seeing an out-migration of our youth populations. So I've pulled together stats from our Newcomer Youth Community Indicators tool from Huron County and Perth County. So this is youth migration from the 15 to 29 age range, which is our provincial definition that we're using for youth. And this is the out-migration from the rural communities. We see that some of the sort of urban centers to these rural counties are attracting some youth, but by and large, and the general trend in these two counties is that they're facing out-migration of youth. And primarily this is happening, people are going to university, people are going away to start their careers, and so it's somewhat understood that this is going to happen. But this raises all kinds of other issues of, are we sending kids away to give them urban-specific skills? Are we not connecting them effectively with our employers? And these are some of the things that many people are looking at, many different stakeholders in this field. When we look at natural balance, we see that, so this is urban Ontario. We see that our population is generally growing, but on on a bit of a trend, a declining trend in recent years, and this is simply births minus deaths. So are we naturally replacing our population? When we look to the rural context, we see a much different picture. So since 2002, the trend has accelerated ahead of urban Ontario. So we're already seeing declines in terms of our ability to naturally replace our population. Except for that blip in 2007, I don't know what explains that, if there's maybe a power outage or something, but I think that actually happened in 2004. But so we're seeing an accelerated trend ahead of what urban Ontario is. They're expecting that by 2040, somewhere around there, we'll see this same decline in natural balance. So it's not just an issue for rural Ontario, but it's certainly accelerated ahead of what we're seeing elsewhere. So this brings it all back down, I think, when you look at an aging population, we look at youth out-migration, we look at our ability to replace our population through birth. We start to see that immigration is certainly going to become, if it's not already, the primary focus for sustaining our workforce and for sustaining our businesses and for sustaining our communities more broadly. So again, with that being said, when we look at, this is a map that indicates the growth of the population in Ontario, and we see that the growth is largely focused around the urban centers. And when we look at immigration to Canada and to Ontario, we see that Wayne Caldwell has a statistic that about 5,000 of 113,000 annual newcomers make their homes outside of large urban areas, which is a pretty small amount. So it's about 95% of the people are settling into urban communities. So we're relying on immigration, but we're seeing that they're largely immigrating to the urban communities, and this is and herein lies where this conversation exists, is how can we be better connecting the people who are moving to these urban centers? How can we connect them with our urban or rural communities and show them the vast opportunities that exist around there? So this is where the work is happening. We have a couple of programs that we're working on, and I do want to emphasize that there are many different stakeholders around Ontario who are working on similar issues. There's workforce planning boards, there's REIP Ontario, there's local immigration partnerships in many of the communities. So there's great energy around this, and forgive me if I've neglected some of the other people who are approaching this from different angles, but that's really the value of this conversation today, I think, is thinking about these ideas and thinking about who we can be connecting with to partner and work on these issues. So in terms of some of the work that we're doing, we have the Community Immigrant Retention in Rural Ontario Guidebook that we've brought together, which is a document that's aimed to support communities in identifying the issue, looking for some strategies, and really developing a plan that their community can take action on. And again, so our role is never to sort of lead the charge. We're here to be supporting the communities and to really encourage a ground-up approach to immigrant attraction and retention. That's under the philosophy that when the community really gets engaged in this, that there's going to be stronger connections made, there are going to be social relationships that are happening, there's going to be more of a lasting impact and sort of community ownership than if we were to sort of lead the charge. But the CIRRO Guidebook is a great sort of primer for people who are, if you're starting a local immigration partnership, or maybe you're looking to connect your economic development department with this issue more prominently. It's a great resource that you can use to get an understanding of the issue and then to come up with a plan. And that's the way it's structured. There are two sections. One looks at the overall issues of immigration, the importance of human capital to our workforce, the idea of welcoming communities and what those can be. And then the second part are practical measures that help you enact a plan. So in terms of the process, this is the sort of planning process. So once you've sort of talked about some of these broader issues, then you can follow through this plan, and it's structured around it's a bit of a strategic planning process, but specifically tailored to the context of immigrant attraction and retention. So it starts off with sort of laying the context and the groundwork, and then really it's about building leadership and uptake in your community and building ownership. And from there, we'd like to encourage people to be working on a plan from a position of knowledge and understanding of what the specific nuances and needs are for your community. What are your competitive advantages, and what do you bring to the table that might be different? So there's a number of resources that can help communities in the analysis and collection of data, from the business retention expansion, first impressions, community exchange, some of these different programs that we have that are within our broader community economic development portfolio. We can be using these to gather information and to understand. From there, there's planning and taking action, so establishing what your goals are for your community, and then finally implementing and measuring, whether you're actually having an impact. So this is it's a great resource that people can use, and I'm seeing a question from Mark even and Vicky, one of my colleagues and a regional advisor in Perth Huron has answered them. So yes, you can access this online. Something cool that we've done with the CIRRO program is, well, I'll get to that in a minute. I'll move on now to the Newcomer and Youth Community Indicators tool. So one component of this we've pulled together, built on the community benchmark initiative that the Conference Board of Canada did, which profiled on a number of statistical indicators what the most attractive cities are in Canada. And so we looked at that and thought maybe we could develop a similar resource that would allow people to benchmark their community against other communities, but really focus this on rural Ontario. So the Newcomer and Youth Community Indicators tool is a statistical resource that pulls together a number of indicators all under one umbrella. And they're all grouped according to some key themes. So the key themes are amenities, so cultural amenities, access to transportation, tourism type opportunities, economy, so unemployment rates, jobs and investment opportunities, these kinds of things, education, education success, proximity to higher education, those kinds of things, access to healthcare, whether there are healthcare facilities located in close proximity, whether there are the services that people need and look for in coming to a community. Housing, certainly important for newcomers coming. Innovation, this is trying to look at that sort of creative class economy and looking at, where there are communities where that might be appealing to some of these newcomers coming in with that skill set. Society and youth are looking at how attractive they are to different demographics within our community. So that's a quick overview of some of the indicators that this tool looks at. And again, the value of this tool is that you can put in your own community, you can come up with the statistical approaches and the statistical outcomes and a measure for those, and you can also compare that across your neighboring communities, across communities that are of a similar population or metropolitan influence zone, which is really your proximity to an urban center. So it allows you to compare apples to apples and so you can look to other communities if they're performing really well. You can look at maybe some of the things that they're doing, and sort of get a sense of what you want to do. So really, this is there to document your relative attractiveness with your peers, and it's to support that strategic planning process. So this is a contribution to that CIRRO resource that we have. This data, something that is important to highlight, is not it's not coming out with a mathematical 100% formula that will say if your community is attractive or not, but it's there to complement and to complement existing local knowledge, but to also identify some things that may not be fully on people's radar, and that will facilitate new conversations. And on that note, I'm just noticing that I've got a few more minutes here, but we've used most recently in Huron County with the local immigration partnership there and Kristen Crane with Huron County. We used the Nike tool and the CIRRO resource to facilitate a conversation around their future plans and what they want to be doing. So it's useful in that sort of facilitation kind of a context. And we had coming from those conversations, they put together an employer lunch that Oliver and myself were both in attendance at, and they had success stories from employers who've been hiring Syrian refugee families, and the room was full of energy and excitement around this, and that's one of the exciting things about all of this is really bringing people into the room and having a conversation about this and drawing the right connections. Following from that meeting, we were seeing employers who were so excited about the positive experiences that they'd had in terms of hiring the Syrian refugee families in their workforce, that they were organizing independent of government. They were coming together to talk about what they could do to bring more people out to their communities. They've really been sharing the stories that it's hard these days to find good talent. A lot of the workforce, the people in the room that we were talking to, manufacturers with advanced occupations in robotics and automation and welding and all these kinds of things, they're looking for good talent, and the majority of their workforce, again, is similar to the demographics of rural Ontario. Majority of their workforce is approaching retirement, and they're facing real challenges in finding youth who are dedicated to the job and want to work, and their experience with Newcomers has been amazing and inspiring to hear their stories. They have so many good things to say about it, and this is what excites me about the work that Oliver's doing, is that he's going to be working to connect these employers with the amazing talent that is existing in our urban communities today. We have it there, and it's an untapped resource, and I'm excited to hear Oliver's presentation, and look forward to any questions later on about this work. Just a final mention, in terms of capacity building and supporting communities, really we have the government, the economic development team here at OMAFRA. We work to support communities, and we have an amazing field staff who are extremely talented and some of the most hardworking people that I know, who are able to come and work with the communities to do strategic planning, to facilitate conversations, to connect the communities with some of these resources that we have here, and really help them move forward. So I encourage everyone to reach out if this is an area that they want to work on, and I'll leave it at that for now. So thanks everyone again, and I'll be around for questions in a few minutes.
Right, thank you very much for that overview and presentation, Ryan, and thank you for sharing your knowledge about the two tools that I'm pretty sure everyone listening today found very useful, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be getting a lot of questions in the Q&A. So now let's shift to Oliver and hear about the Rural Employment Initiative Project.
Yes, thank you so much, Fatma and Ryan, for sharing. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for me to share what we've been doing with regards to the Rural Employment Initiative. And I hope it will be of benefit to all participants. So the Rural Employment Initiative is really a program or project of the Newcomer Center of Peel, which is really a multi-service, charitable, not-for-profit organization that assists the entire Newcomer family in achieving settlement and integration within the region of Peel. Our major goal is to help newcomers to overcome settlement barriers or to mitigate some of those negative impact that barriers have on newcomers. The Rural Employment Initiative it's really a provincial initiative that seeks to connect newcomers with settlement agencies throughout the GTA, along with rural networks, with the major goal of just trying to connect immigrants to employment opportunities in rural communities that have sustainable job opportunities, thereby facilitating the movement of immigrants from metropolitan GTA to rural Ontario. The project, while being offered through Newcomer Center of Peel, our major partner is the Community Futures Ontario, and we're fortunate to be funded by the Ontario Trillium Foundation. The goal is to connect immigrants to employers that have sustainable jobs and really provide this opportunity whereby they can move from the GTA and be in an area where they are more comfortable, where they can identify, especially those who have lived in a rural community before coming to Canada. The major deliverables for the Rural Employment Initiative, whilst we are working with the Community Futures Development Corporation, there are four main pillars that we use to achieve this objective. The first one is to connect immigrants to sustainable job opportunities. And when we talk about sustainable job opportunities, we're actually seeking to identify kind of jobs that are able to sustain themselves and their families. Secondly, it has to do with diversity and settlement training. One question many newcomers ask, if we move to a rural area, will we be accepted? Are communities prepared and ready for us? And so built into our project is to deliver diversity awareness training. We know that one training will not change mindsets, but it's really to start the conversation. And so far, we've actually been working a lot with the Huron County, and we have gone in and had one diversity awareness training before. And so hope to continue to deliver diversity training throughout the entire province. And the third pillar has to do with the Ontario Community Futures Development Corporation and its network. And we are using the network to connect to employers and other stakeholders. In fact, the Community Futures Development is really a federal initiative to promote sustainability of rural communities. And as they reach out to small and medium-sized businesses, we are tapping into their network. Their 61 member network, who then relate to employers and other stakeholders throughout the community. And the final option is rural settlement agencies. Being in Newcomer Center of Peel, we're not able to provide the type of settlement support that our newcomers would need when they relocate. So we are reaching out to communities that has settlement service organization or employment services. And so as we connect a newcomer to an employer, we're actually reaching out to the settlement services to seek their support in helping that newcomer to get settled in the community. We recognize that there are a number of communities that do not have settlement services, But based on our years of experience offering settlement service at Newcomer Center of Peel, we're in a position to work with employers to kind of guide them as to how they can assist newcomers once they have offered them employment. How we connect the newcomers. Earlier I talked about the Community Future Development Corporation Network. So newcomers are being connected through them as they connect us to their employers and other stakeholders in the community. Secondly, whilst we depend on our network in rural areas to connect us to employers, we also reach out directly to employers in rural areas to actually let them know the database of clients we have and the profiles, with the hope that this relationship will motivate employers to put the job postings out there, pass on directly to us, and we would then prepare our clients to apply for such jobs. We're also reaching out to all the job boards. And from there, once we identify suitable jobs, we actually refer them to our newcomers, and we do selective follow-up with employers as we are able to do. And finally, once a client is registered to participate in the REI project, it is not that we are actually giving them a job, but we are actually preparing them with tools so that they can do their own job search. So there are two models that the REI covers. The first one, which I've been talking about a lot, it has to do with employment. And so the clients who are registered in the REI, they are coming from different settlement service organizations throughout the region of Peel, as well as also, we'll say, throughout the GTA. Once they've come in, we prepare them, ensure that they are job ready, and then we try to connect them to our partners in the rural areas, directly and indirectly, so that they can start applying for jobs. So we're actually providing that support, and our partners are the conduit through which we get the job postings. The second model has to do with entrepreneurship. I think we're fortunate to be partnering with the Community Futures Ontario, because their mandate is really about promoting establishment of businesses. And we have had a number of newcomers who have come in and have said, we want to invest, we want to start a business. But oftentimes, many of them are not aware of the opportunities that exist outside of the GTA. So whilst that interest is there, we have on board business developers, business advisors who guides these individuals, and as well as we refer them to the Community Futures Development Corporations, and they will also get support from them. And so this aspect of our model is perhaps the newest, and we continue to work and develop on that. As we think about assisting newcomers to relocate, I think these statements from Stats Canada and from our former minister is rather profound. It says 7 out of every 10 recent immigrants settled in the GTA, Montreal, and Vancouver. Our former minister says we would like to spread immigrants across the country relatively evenly. The last thing we want is every immigrant goes to either Toronto or Vancouver. And even though there are provincial programs, once someone lands in Canada, after a time, they then are free to move to whichever province or city they want to. So this REI project is really trying to kind of provide that central hub that newcomers can filter to whichever rural community that interests them. During the first year of our project, we have been focused a lot on developing partnerships, and Southwest Ontario, Huron County, Thunder Bay, Parry Sound, and Windsor are some of the early partners that we have been working with. And as we reach out to these communities, or they've reached out to in some cases, it's important that we have a number of stakeholders on board, those that directly relate to employers. And so Economic Development Department of the municipalities, workforce planning boards, employment services, settlement service, and any other stakeholder that connects direct employers. It would be good to have them around the table to ensure that we have a central hub of persons who we relate to. And over the last 3 or 4 weeks, that list of 5 partners have perhaps extended to about 10, and it's growing. We have also had employers who have decided that the REI is a good hub to furnish them with the skill set that they're looking to fill many positions. The profile of the newcomers we have seen so far and who we are actually relating to must be permanent residents or conventional refugees. They must have a language level of, or we expect a language level of Canadian language benchmark of 6 or above. And they ought to be job ready. So they are prepared in terms of doing interviews, in terms of having a resume so organized based on the Canadian standard, and they should be actively seeking a job. They should also be willing to relocate. When a newcomer comes to us, it's not for us to motivate them to, okay, you need to go rural, but they must have that interest and that desire to want to relocate. And one of the strangest things that often newcomers come and say, oh, I want to go drive within an hour of the GTA or an hour from Mississauga, which on any snow day or in a rainy day or an accident, that is not outside of the GTA, but they're still within the urban areas. The clients must also have a desire to re-enter their professions or to utilize their transferable skills. And there are many newcomers who oftentimes takes a very long time to get back to where they were prior to coming to Canada. So if that desire is there, then for sure this client would be involved in the project at some point. This screen actually captures the newcomers we have seen. And what we have noticed is that engineering is top of the list. Engineering, computer science, accounting, and finance. Those are the top professions of the clients who have registered with us. But as the clients have come, they've come with diverse professional background. And so we are trying to connect the client based on what their needs are. And their professionals are diverse as well as their countries of origin. And the top country from which our clients come are India, Pakistan, I believe Nigeria. And the list will always continue to grow as we reach out to our settlement service and employment service partners within the GTA. As we focus on gender, this just captures those whom we have interviewed. And the dominant gender, of course, is male, which is 79%. But we are seeking not just to move one individual, but we're actually focusing on the entire family. So to connect our newcomers to jobs, at this time we're actually organizing a job fair, which is rather a very unique one because the primary focus is for rural employment. It will happen on May 30th in Mississauga. And we are expecting, our target is 600 or more newcomers. We are also targeting settlement and employment services within various communities. So as throughout this job fair, newcomers have two main opportunities. One is to connect to employers, to be interviewed for jobs, and whilst you're doing that, to connect to a settlement service or employment service organization from the community to understand what resources are there and how communities will help them to get settled. And we have had success stories in terms of connecting newcomers to employers and to settlement services. As a matter of fact, we had one client who got a job in the Southwest Ontario area, and we're able to reach out to the settlement service organization there, and they provided that client with assist the client with housing, getting a mentor as well as to assist the client in finding other job opportunities. And so that's just a typical model. And so as we look to further roll out this project, we are at a state of readiness now where we want employers to be open to accept newcomers, to fill those positions that are void, fill those void positions within the organization. Because the interest of newcomers is great, and the dream of newcomers when they come to Canada is really to get back in their profession. I think being the central hub within the Mississauga region or the Peel region to process all these newcomers is a wonderful opportunity we have to further advance the careers of our newcomers and to help them to realize this wonderful dream and to help sustain many of the rural communities. Thank you very much. I'll be done.
Thank you, Oliver, for the overview of the Rural Employment Initiative project. I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot of questions coming your way from our participants today. So for the remainder of our time, we want to hear from and engage with those that are tuning in today. I'll begin the Q&A session by asking one question to each Ryan and Oliver, and then after that I encourage everyone to ask them questions as we shift to the other screen, which is the Q&A screen. Please submit your questions for both Oliver and Ryan into the Q&A box while I get us started with the first two questions. So the first question is to Ryan. Ryan, what are some of the ways that rural communities can support government initiatives and programs for workforce development? What can be done at the local level to help attract and retain newcomers and immigrants? Ryan, are you still with us?
Yeah, hi Fatma. Sorry, I think that's a really great question, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of other questions that hopefully we can answer offline if we don't get to them. They're really great questions I'm seeing coming through. But I think that question speaks to what's the role of the community and what's the role of government in this overall conversation. And it's really important, to me, I see it the other way around though, is how can the government be supporting the work and the action that the communities are doing, and not what they can do to be supporting us. So again, coming back to the whole philosophy around the local immigration partnerships is that we have a bottom-up, community-driven process happening where it's members from the community who are coming together and taking action on some of these initiatives. I think that approach is so incredibly important because you're building connections, not only within the community, you're building new relationships and working partnerships, but you're also building connections with newcomers to your community. So I think we can certainly be here to point people in the right direction. So in terms of things people can do, there's a lot of literature and ideas around things like making housing affordable and accessible, transportation, reducing the barriers there, language training, orientation to the community. There's a lot of these different things that these local immigration partnerships can take on. But I think one of the most important things is to reach out to people like Oliver and to workforce planning boards and to different municipal economic development officers, and depending where you're coming from, to build those connections and to get people excited around this idea. Just coming back to what our experience was in that employer lunch that we had in Huron County, talking about the opportunities of hiring Syrian refugees. Having that sort of presentation from two employers, so we had Jim Estill, who is the CEO of Danby, who had who had personally funded 50 families to come to Guelph, and he's had a lot of press around that, and Coach Industries presented as well. And the excitement in the room is so contagious, and to hear it coming from employers, I think is so important and valuable, because other employers will be getting on board and seeing, well, if they can do it, we can do it, and hearing the stories of how beneficial it is just to their business and to the bottom line in terms of having these kinds of really hard workers, I think is so incredibly important. So I think it comes down to sort of getting this, sort of building the momentum and creating those connections, and then reaching out to government to see how we can support those actions in terms of some of these resources that we have.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Ryan. So my other question is to Oliver. Oliver, we know that integrating newcomers and immigrants in rural communities comes with challenges. Can you share with us what are some of those challenges that employers might have to overcome when dealing with new population groups entering the workforce in rural communities?
Okay. I think one of the difficulties for the employer who has limited experience with, international trained professionals is understanding and effectively dealing with cultural differences. Asking such questions as whether the behavior is cultural or is an individual, or how do I address it. There are also challenges in terms of giving and eliciting feedback. I think constructive feedback is an important component for building effective teams. And so giving feedback across cultures can be really a challenge, and especially because of just the diverse cultural background that we have amongst our newcomer groups. I think also maybe a third challenge would be really understanding the stages of cultural shock. I think it's helpful for the employer to understand that stage of adjustment for a newcomer might be going through, especially in the rural areas. It varies, and oftentimes when the newcomer ought to be focusing on the job, some of these culture shock sometimes impact on behavior. But within the REI project, I think we have built in that diversity training piece, where we are able to work with employers to assist in terms of dealing with these cultural differences or cultural shock or feedback. And so we are always available to offer these training to employers at no cost, as we are already being funded to deliver same.
Okay. Thanks very much for that, Oliver. Those are really good points that you raised, because the cross-cultural piece is something that is very difficult, and it takes an adjustment period for both the newcomers as well as the employers. There needs to be some sort of learning opportunities to be able to understand the issues that each party is facing, especially when it's newcomers going to a new community and they have the adjustment period of just being in a new place, as well as the employers to understand what are some of the things that they need to offer in order to help support their new community members and employees. So thank you for that. So I'm now going to ask the first question that was posed to us, and that's by Andrew. And Andrew's asking a question to Oliver. So Andrew is asking, Oliver, how can employers in rural Eastern Ontario register for the job fair in Mississauga?
Okay, so I think to register, I did provide the email in the chat box. Send an email to us or even to my personal email, oprice, and I put it in the chat box as well. oprice@ncp.ca, and we will respond as well. Or even I'll also put the phone number there where you can also reach out to us.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Oliver. Now we have another question, and it's to both, I guess, Ryan and Oliver. So we don't have a person's name, but he or she is asking, what are some fears employers might have in terms of hiring a newcomer?
I think just quickly speaking to the experience, having talked with Jim Estel about what he did, it wasn't so much a fear. He sort of leapt in head first and started hiring them with the understanding that there are going to be some employees that don't work out, and there are going to be others who are incredible. I think there's some intimidation around language barriers and some of the additional attention and human resources that are needed to have translators on a manufacturing floor, so that they can, and what's the ratio there? So is it 1 to 10 employees? So if you have a company with 60 people on a manufacturing line, you need 6 translators so that they can effectively help people who are doing the work. So there's a lot of these challenges, and I think one of the great opportunities that we have is where there are people who are leading by example and really pushing forward with this, is that we can capture what they've been doing, and Jim has a lot of ideas around that, and I know that there are other companies and communities out there who are doing very similar things. So not to just use him as the only example, but I think we need to. Those are some of those things seem like the challenges, and I think there's an opportunity there to help alleviate those fears in reaching out and speaking to the people who've already been doing it.
I think sometimes employers are hesitant because they don't see or feel that newcomers, some newcomers, maybe from some cultures, might be able to fit into their workplace culture. But I think the bottom line really is that it's really about profitability and having the right skill set in the workplace. And our newcomers are rather very motivated. You know, it takes sometimes the type of orientation to get them on board. But we are very fortunate that many settlement service organizations and employment service organizations have been funded to bridge that gap, where we help clients to be ready for the workplace. For example, even Newcomer Center of Field, we have labor market programs that help our clients understand what to expect in the workplace. And many clients or clients are able to make that adjustment. But for employers, it's really jumping in and just offering individuals opportunity. We have got to move away from be those who allow others to give maybe a newcomer an opportunity, and then we seek to hire that newcomer, but also be there at the forefront to give a newcomer a chance to work. Because based on the level of motivation by our newcomers, they are ready and willing to take up employment opportunities.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Oliver and Ryan, for providing us with solutions as to how some of the employers that might kind of be hesitant in hiring the newcomers, what are some options available to them. So those were great tips and ideas that you shared with us. And I just want to share that the Hire Immigrants team has actually recently covered a story about a plant in Manitoba, Maple Leaf Foods plant, and what they did was, I think it was they were offering English language courses on site for some of the newcomers that they needed to work on their plants. So there's definitely, as you both mentioned, there are ways, there are solutions. It's just employers need to be creative, and it's really good to know that there are supports available to the employers in terms of from the settlement agency's perspective. So I think this is something that is a good takeaway for everyone tuning in today. So now we also have a question from Audrey from the municipality of Chatham and Kent. And Audrey is asking, she's saying that REI Newcomer Profile is their job ready, etc. Many are accountants and engineers, and so they are in regulated professions. And she wants to know, have the newcomers had their credentials assessed?
Okay, so part of our intake interview is to assist newcomers in preparing for these jobs. Many of our newcomers have gone through credential assessment, for example, through our education services or through ICAS. So we guide them in that direction. For regulated professions, as the client come in, we offer them guidance as to where they can go and how they can connect to these various associations to get get into those regulated professions. So it is a service that we assist all our clients with.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that, Oliver. Ryan, would you like to jump in, or should I go to the next question?
No, I think that's fine. Oliver covered that. Yeah.
Okay. We have a great question coming in from, well, we know it's guest number 3, and they're saying, how do you ensure that there is sustainable, welcoming culture to retain newcomer employees, recognizing that the process of enculturation or negotiating one's culture takes a while? Are there ongoing support once there has been initial cross-cultural competency training?
I think that's a really neat question. I'll just quickly mention, I think one of the really cool things that has come from the way that Canada has chosen to settle the Syrian families is that they've had community members who are engaged with them and supporting them, and they really feel connected. They're not just passively accepting newcomers to the community, and hearing people speaking so proudly about the families that they've been able to support, and seeing that they're not just contributing to the workforce, but they're contributing to the social fabric in the community, and they're bringing all kinds of really cool new ideas and cultures and food and music and all this stuff. I think it's so important that we create those sort of community connections right away. But also something that we've been hearing is that it takes more than just one family to a community to make it welcoming. You need to be bringing in more than one, and some of the employers at the meeting have been talking about bringing in up to 10 families and hiring them for working at their plant. So I think there's a critical mass that rural Ontario needs. That's a unique challenge because we don't have the existing population of newcomers to Canada that are already in the GTA. We need to achieve some sort of critical mass, is what we've been hearing from some of the communities. So.
I also think that Rand earlier mentioned some of the statistics in terms of the trends in terms of population within the rural communities. And I believe as employers are trying to fill positions, it's really about investing in the community. The bottom line is really profitability. And once you employ someone, it's also investing in other community resources that will support those newcomers and their families. Because, if an employee is happy and his family is happy, then you're going to get the best out of that employee. As well as for some employers, it might be a new trend to have such a diverse culture within the workplace. So it's actually having programs, mentorship programs, to help newcomers to settle in and help develop a sense of awareness amongst the staff to accept and to work with their new colleagues who have such a rich and diverse cultural background.
All right, thank you very much, both Oliver and Ryan, for your answer to that question. And there are many more questions that unfortunately we will not have the opportunity to get to today. So I just want to say thank you all so much, but unfortunately we have run out of time. So on behalf of all of our participants, on the Ontario government, our sponsor, I'd like to thank Oliver and Ryan for an informative session and exchange of ideas, as well as for the practical tips and solutions that you shared. Once the webinar recording and downloadable resources are available, everyone who registered today will be notified via email. These resources will be made available at www.hireimmigrants.org, so please bookmark the page and share it with your colleagues and networks. Finally, before I let you go, the Hire Immigrants team really values everyone's feedback and thoughts on today's session. So please complete the online evaluation by clicking the link on your screen. It's a very short survey. And that's it for our webinar today. Goodbye, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we will see you next time.